Have you ever gone home to bury someone you loved, only to discover that your family already buried your place in it? Let me know where you're watching from, because this is the story of how my siblings divided everything my mother owned, except for one thing that ruined them all. When you walk into your childhood home after years of absence, you expect some things to be different. Dust in corners, old furniture moved, maybe a silence that clings to the walls. What I didn't expect was the silence at my mother's funeral to be so cold. Like I was the one who didn't belong. Like I was the stranger. My name is Alina. I'm the youngest of three. My brother Sean is the eldest, charming, sharp, always held up as the golden child. Then there's Paige, elegant, calculating, my mother's supposed mini-me. And then there was me, the quiet one, the one who left. The one they never really forgave for building a life far from home. I got the call 3 days before the service. A voicemail from Paige, flat, almost mechanical. "Hey, Mom's gone. Funeral's Friday, 2 p.m. St. Catherine's. I assume you'll show up." That was it. "No, I'm sorry. No, she asked for you." Just an assumption that I'd play my part. I flew in Thursday night. Alone. No one met me at the airport. No one asked where I was staying. It was like I was already a ghost to them. The funeral itself was beautiful. Too beautiful. Like something they staged to perform grief. Paige wore a high-neck black dress, like she was auditioning for a photo op. Sean gave a speech that sounded like it had been copy-pasted from a eulogy generator. And me? I sat in the third pew, next to a stranger, while my siblings took the front row like they were heirs to a throne. When the service ended, people murmured condolences, some too polite to ask why I looked so alone. One older woman and neighbor from our childhood squeezed my hand. "Your mama talked about you all the time, sweetheart. She was proud." It almost broke me, because if that was true, why had I been pushed so far out? Why had my siblings shut me out even while she was sick? I found out later that day that they'd already started dividing the estate. Aunt Carla, bless her nosy soul, let it slip over coffee. They said they met with the lawyer last week. Said it was simple. House goes to Sean. Jewelry and savings split with Paige. No mention of you, but I figured you'd gotten something private. I blinked. Last week? Mom had been alive last week. Barely but breathing. And they were already in talks with her lawyer? That night, I stayed at the house. The one we grew up in. Sean was already packing up his part of the living room. Old vinyl records, my mother's tea set, the silver-framed photo of him holding his first diploma. Paige had boxes in the bedroom. Labeled. Color-coded. Like grief was something to organize. They barely acknowledged me. Like I was there to watch. Not to inherit. Not to belong. At one point, Sean handed me a box. "Mom said you could have this," he said. She kept it in the attic. Probably junk. But hey, memory lane, right? I took the box. Small. Wooden. Locked. No key. I carried it upstairs like it was glass. Sat on the edge of the bed that used to be mine. Ran my fingers over the carvings, not intricate, but intentional. Like someone's initials had been sanded away over time. Inside the lid, etched faintly in the wood, were 2 words. For Alina. And suddenly, I couldn't breathe. Because whatever was inside, it was meant for me. Not Paige. Not Sean. Me. I didn't try to open it that night. I just held it, like a promise. Like proof that even if they'd forgotten me in the will, my mother hadn't forgotten me in her heart. And that was the beginning. Not of healing, but of something colder, something sharper, something earned. They thought they had divided everything, but they missed the one box that mattered, and I hadn't even opened it yet. Comment below. What would you do if the one thing your mother left behind had the power to rewrite everything they stole? Have you ever been left out of a will? Have you ever felt like your own family erased you the second it became profitable? Drop your city or flag below if you've ever seen quiet revenge grow from something small, like a locked wooden box. The day after the funeral, I found myself standing in my mother's kitchen, the kitchen where she used to make sweet potato pies by hand, listening to my siblings fight over an antique lamp. I wish I was joking. That lamp was Mom's favorite. Paige snapped, arms crossed, heels clicking against the tile. Which is exactly why I'm taking it, Sean replied, his voice dipped in smugness. She always said it reminded her of Dad. And I was the one who cleaned it for her every Saturday for 6 years. I paid the electric bill last month. They stopped talking when they noticed me. Or rather, when they remembered I existed. I said nothing. Just sipped coffee from a chipped mug and watched them divide my mother like she was a checklist. Later that afternoon, Paige sat me down in the living room like she was about to deliver charity. She pulled a manila folder from her tote bag and dropped it on the coffee table.
"The will," she said.
No one told me there was a formal reading. There wasn't. Sean chimed in from the hallway. You weren't exactly around. We handled it privately. Mom didn't want drama. Translation. We didn't invite you. I opened the folder with shaking fingers. The legal language was clear, cold, and final. The house to Sean. The bank accounts split between Sean and Paige. The jewelry specifically itemized to Paige. No mention of me. Not even a line. Just a signature from my mother and a notarized stamp dated 3 weeks before she passed. My throat tightened. You're telling me she left me nothing? Sean shrugged. Guess she didn't think you'd need it. The betrayal didn't hit like a slap. It hit like a silence. Like a room where your name has been erased from every photo. And no one cares enough to notice. That night, I went back to the room upstairs, locked the door behind me, and pulled out the box. I turned it in my hands. Still sealed. Still mine. I searched every drawer, every old jewelry dish, every jacket pocket of hers I could find, until finally, tucked inside a hollowed-out book on her bedside shelf, I found a small gold key. It didn't look like much, but when I slid it into the box and turned it, click, it opened with a whisper. Inside was a stack of letters, aged, yellowed, tied with a burgundy ribbon. Underneath them, a folded deed, an envelope with a bank logo, a photograph of my mother, young, strong, standing in front of a restaurant I didn't recognize. The sign above her read, Naomi's Table, EST 1985, and written on the back of the photo, in her unmistakable cursive, for Alina, you'll know what to do. I sat back, heart pounding, hands shaking. This wasn't junk. This wasn't nostalgia. This was history. Inheritance. Not the kind you fight over in court, but the kind that builds something your name belongs to. I opened the first letter. Her voice spilled out in ink. My baby, if you're reading this, it means they didn't think you'd come. I know your brother and sister. They love what they can touch, not what they carry. But you? You carry me. You carry us. I left you the truth. Everything else was noise. There were 5 letters in total, each one filled with memories, recipes, plans. Descriptions of the restaurant she once owned, then closed after our father passed. But she kept the deed. She kept the keys. And she left them to me. I barely slept. I reread the letters until the words felt like breath. And by morning, I had already looked up the address on Google Maps. The restaurant still stood, boarded up, faded, but standing. At breakfast, I sat across from Paige and Sean as they ate eggs over property like it belonged to them by birthright. You two done playing king and queen? I asked. Paige arched an eyebrow. You good? I nodded slowly. Better than good. I'm just realizing Mom didn't forget me after all. Sean laughed.
Sure.
She left you a box of napkins and receipts. That's adorable. Paige added. We were the ones here. We handled everything. I leaned back in my chair. Well, then you probably won't mind if I handle what she did leave me.
Sean blinked.
What are you talking about? I smiled. No worries. You'll see. They got the house, the savings, the jewelry, but they left me the blueprint. And the first letter already told me everything I need to turn what they ignored into something they'll never be able to touch. If you opened a box after your mother passed and found letters, deeds, and a secret business she never told your siblings about, would you tell them? Or keep it quiet and let karma grow in silence? Let me know what you do and what city you're listening from. The next morning, I drove to the address listed on the deed. Naomi's Table, or what was left of it. An old brick building with a sagging awning and graffiti on the back wall. The windows were boarded. The paint had peeled into dust. But the bones were there. The sign, faded but readable, still read. Naomi's Table, home cooking with heart. And under it, in script barely visible unless you knew where to look, built for family, run on love. The lock was rusted, but the key still worked. When I stepped inside, the air was stale. Dust hung like ghosts in the sunlight. But it wasn't dead. It was sleeping. Booths still lined the walls. A broken clock hung above the register. And behind the counter, handwritten menus from 1996 were taped to a corkboard. I walked through it slowly, touching the edges of my mother's life. This was her real legacy. Not the house, not the jewelry. This place, built from nothing. Built for someone who saw value in roots, not resale. And she left it to me. Back at the house, I read the rest of the letters. Each one layered with intention. She wrote about how the restaurant was her dream. How she closed it after Dad died, too broken to keep it running alone, but never sold it. Because, in her words, one day, I knew you'd come looking. Not for money, for meaning. She wrote about old recipes, the ones she never shared with Paige. She wrote about the time I used to stand on a stool in the kitchen and stir her gumbo while she hummed Marvin Gaye under her breath. She wrote about me, not as the quiet one, not as the one who left, as the one who saw her. That night, I made my decision. No announcement, no fight. I packed my things, told my siblings I was heading back home, and left with only a backpack and the deed in my purse. Paige barely looked up from her laptop.
Sean didn't say goodbye.
Which was fine, because soon they'd remember me very clearly. I spent the next 2 weeks moving, quietly, subletting a small studio near Naomi's Table, reconnecting with the lawyer who had notarized the deed. Yes, she said, your mother transferred it to you privately. It was never tied to the formal will. She wanted to avoid interference. Smart woman. I updated the business license, opened a new account, ordered the permits. The lawyer asked if I'd be naming it something new. I shook my head.
No.
Naomi's Table stays. She earned that name. I used my own savings for the repairs. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I wanted every nail, every brushstroke, every rewired socket to be mine. To have my hands in the rebuild. To feel it rise again. Not from inheritance, but from intention. One day, while cleaning out the storage closet, I found an old cash ledger. Inside were scribbled notes from my mother. Customer names. Dishes ordered. Personal comments like, Mr. Keys, extra cornbread, leave on the side. Shauna, 7 months pregnant. Double peach cobbler. People came here for food, but they came back for her. That's what Paige and Sean never understood. You can inherit a house, but you can't inherit heart. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing.
Not yet. But word got out anyway.
The first time was at the permit office, then the sign company, and finally, a local food blog posted a teaser. Naomi's Table is coming back, and it's still in the family. That's when I got the first text. From Paige. Why is there a restaurant tag with our mother's name popping up online? I didn't reply. The second message came from Sean. Did you buy the building? Thought we were done dividing stuff. Still, I didn't respond. Because they weren't owed an answer. Not yet. Let them wonder. Let them watch. Because for the first time in years, they were about to see me rise, not with noise, with proof. They divided our mother's life like it was theirs to carve. But what they left behind was the one thing they couldn't fake. And now that I've unlocked it, I don't need their permission to rise. Just enough silence for them to hear me coming. Every morning, I opened Naomi's Table like I was waking something sacred.
The dust was mostly gone by now.
The air smelled of fresh wood, lemon cleaner, and ambition. I'd restored the front sign first, hand-painted it exactly how it used to be. Not flashy, not trendy, just familiar. And that alone got people talking. Old neighbors stopped by to peek through the windows. One woman knocked gently and asked, "Is it really coming back?" I nodded. "My mama used to bring me here for pie," she said. "Your mom knew everyone's name." I smiled. That's the plan. And just like that, word of mouth lit a fuse. I didn't do a grand opening. I didn't even advertise, not in the traditional way. I opened softly. 2 tables, 1 handwritten menu, 3 dishes, and every seat filled within 20 minutes. The first day, I cooked everything myself. Gumbo, cornbread, and banana pudding. All recipes from my mother's letters. No frills, just flavor. Every plate came with a memory. People came in quiet, left full, and somehow softer. That's how I knew it had begun. Not just the business, the restoration. By the end of the second week, a local newspaper ran a headline. "Naomi's table reopens. A daughter's love brings back a local legend." The article went viral in our town, not just because of the food, because of who brought it back. That night, Paige called me. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. "So, this is what you were doing? Reopening Mom's dusty dream instead of accepting what you were given." I deleted it, because I didn't need to accept anything. I was building everything. Sean showed up in person, walked in one afternoon during a slow hour, didn't order anything, just stood there like a man trying to find an angle in a house that had no mirrors. "So," he said, "this was what the box was about." I wiped down the counter. It was about what Mom built. "And what you think this makes you her favorite now?" I looked up.
No, Sean.
"I've always been her daughter. You just forgot I was part of the story." He laughed, short, nervous. "You've got press now. Congratulations. That won't pay forever." I handed him a to-go cup of sweet tea. "Watch me." I hired staff by the 3rd week. People from the neighborhood. One young cook named Micah who reminded me of myself. Focused, quiet, watching everything. One server named Brielle who already knew half the town. I told them the story.
Who Naomi was.
What she stood for. And I made one thing clear. This is not about turning tables. It's about turning hearts. And they got it. They felt it. Revenue grew.
Fast.
A month in, a food blogger with 400K followers posted a video. "This spot has no website, no advertising, and no pretension. Just real food with soul. It's like eating a memory." That night, my wait list tripled. And for the first time, I opened the envelope from the box with the bank's logo. Inside, an account number. A savings account with my mother's name, with mine listed as co-owner. $47,213.68. She'd saved it. For this.
For me.
The next morning I expanded, added new hours, remodeled the kitchen, installed new appliances, and etched a new plaque near the door. This house was built by Naomi, reclaimed by Alina. Paige showed up a week later. She brought a lawyer. "Just to talk," she said, all professional polish. The lawyer asked about the deed. I pulled out the notarized papers. Stamped, sealed, recorded. "This wasn't part of the estate," I said. "It was passed to me privately." Paige didn't like that. "This business is using her name," she snapped. "We're entitled to." "To nothing," I said. "You left the box behind, remember? You can't claim what you ignored." They left, frustrated, fuming, but powerless. Because Mom didn't just give me a business. She gave me a story. And I was telling it now, with every plate served, every door opened, every line out front. It was a rainy Tuesday when the letter arrived. Thick cream-colored envelope, heavy with arrogance. Inside, a formal notice from Sean and Paige's attorney. "Your use of the Naomi name may be considered a violation of shared familial legacy and could constitute brand misrepresentation."
Brand.
As if my mother's name was a logo. As if they had a right to it after everything they discarded. I folded the letter slowly, placed it in a drawer. Then I took a deep breath and kept cooking. The next day, our story ran in a national magazine. Legacy, served hot. How one daughter rebuilt her mother's table from scratch. It was an interview I almost didn't agree to. But the writer? She got it. She sat at table 3 and said, "You're not just reviving a business. You're finishing a love letter." That stayed with me, so I let her tell it. The story exploded. We went from local buzz to statewide demand. Phone calls, emails, requests for bookings a month out. And most importantly, the story mentioned why the restaurant existed again. Because I found the box. Because I read the letters. Because I built something that didn't require my siblings' permission. Sean sent a second letter. This one more aggressive. A threat of litigation unless I cease use of any intellectual property tied to Naomi Carter. Naomi Carter. My mother. Not a brand. A woman. A woman they abandoned in her final weeks while they counted her belongings. I didn't call them. I didn't beg. I simply posted a statement on Naomi's Table's page. Naomi's Table is not a brand. It is a woman's legacy, built with her own hands, funded by her own savings, and passed to her daughter through the only thing stronger than paperwork: trust. This restaurant belongs to the community that remembers her, and to the future that honors her. We're not going anywhere. The comments flooded in. Hundreds. My mom ate here in the 90s. Your mama gave her a free meal when she couldn't afford it. This food tastes like home. Don't let them touch what they threw away. Naomi would be so proud. Then came the news I didn't expect. The lawyer who handled my mother's private deed reached out. "I just wanted you to know," she said, "Naomi requested a posthumous filing to archive your ownership with the historical registry. The paperwork came through today." My throat caught. She did that.
She did.
She said you'd know what to do once the town started listening. And they were. They were listening. A local council member visited Naomi's Table that weekend. A quiet man named Daryl who used to be in my mother's Sunday school class. He brought flowers. A photograph of Naomi holding a baby me. "This restaurant is more than food," he said. "It's a story, and I'm nominating it for a preservation grant." I didn't cry until he left, because that was something Sean and Paige could never take. They tried to get press on their side, but the public sentiment had already flipped. People remembered who ran the restaurant before, and now they saw who kept it alive. They showed up daily,
Bought food.
left tips, brought stories, each one a quiet nail in the coffin of my siblings' imagined superiority. Paige finally called. She didn't threaten. She didn't beg. She asked to talk. "Not as enemies," she said, "as sisters." I let the silence sit, then said, "Now you remember I'm your sister?" Her voice cracked.
You don't understand.
"You always left." "No," I said. "You pushed. I survived." We met once at a park near the house. She wore sunglasses, brought legal documents, offered a settlement to share Naomi's Table branding across multiple cities. I didn't even touch the folder. "You want a franchise?" "We want to preserve the legacy," she said. "All business." I stared her down.
No.
"You want to own what you didn't build. But I don't rent out legacy. Especially not to people who couldn't see it when it was dusty." She left in silence. And I haven't heard from her since. They showed up together. Sean and Paige. In suits. Not church suits. Not funeral suits. Litigation suits. It was mid-morning, and Naomi's Table was already buzzing. People eating at tables I hand-sanded. Music playing from the playlist I made the night before. My team moving like clockwork. They walked in like they owned the place. But everyone inside turned to look like they didn't belong. They asked to speak to me privately. I brought them to the back office. No coffee. No chairs. I stood. So they did, too. Paige spoke first. "We just want this to be fair." My eyebrow arched. "Fair." "Yes," Sean added. "Look, you've clearly built something impressive here. No one's disputing that. But it is our mother's name. Her legacy. That makes it shared." I walked slowly to the file cabinet, pulled out a folder, opened it flat on the desk like I was unveiling scripture. Inside, the notarized deed, the business license, the historical grant application, the bank account with both our names, my mother's letters, the ones she addressed only to me. I let them read in silence, watched their postures collapse. Their confidence didn't disappear, but it wilted, like something had finally clicked. Sean cleared his throat. We didn't know about all this. You didn't ask. It wasn't intentional.
Yes, it was.
You kept me out. You had meetings before she passed. You divided her assets without me. And when I walked into that house, you both treated me like I'd never belonged. Paige lowered her gaze. That's not how we saw it. No, I said, it's how you wanted to see it. Because that was easier than facing the fact that Mom left me something she didn't trust either of you with. Silence. And then I pulled out the final card. The last envelope in a box. The one labeled, if they come for what they ignored. I opened it. Inside was a single note, in my mother's looping handwriting. Baby, you don't owe anyone your voice if they never earned your silence. But if they do come looking, hand them this. I turned it around. A handwritten clause, attached to the deed, signed and dated. The rights to Naomi's table, including all brand use, recipes, licensing, and representation, belong solely to my daughter, Alina Carter. No one else is entitled to profit from my story. I handed it to Paige. She read it twice. Her hands trembled. Where was this? In the box you both called junk. They didn't yell, didn't argue. They just stood there in stunned, bitter silence. Because the paper was real. The stamp was real. The truth, unshakable. I don't want to fight, I said. I never did. But I also won't let you rewrite a story you refused to be part of when it mattered. Sean finally spoke. His voice was low. She always said you were different. I said. I listened. And now, so will the world. They left without another word. And when the door closed behind them, I sat at my desk, folded the note back into the envelope, and exhaled. Not out of relief, out of release. Because that confrontation wasn't a war. It was a funeral for the version of myself that ever believed I needed their validation. If you could speak to someone who once overlooked you, now that you've become everything they thought you'd never be, what would you say? Drop a heart below if you believe some legacies are built in silence, but remembered forever. The next morning, I opened Naomi's table before the sun did. The lights buzzed to life, like they were waking up beside me. I walked through the space slowly, ran my fingers over the counter, smiled at the old cash drawer's gentle squeak, touched the recipe board that still had Mom's original notes tucked behind it. This place wasn't just alive. It remembered her. The town remembered too. They came in like church on Sundays, dressed in stories. Your mama used to sneak me extra biscuits. She let my son wash dishes after school when we couldn't afford a sitter. She hugged me through my divorce. No one mentioned the will. No one asked about Sean or Paige. They just said her name like it was a hymn. And I realized that was the real inheritance. Not property, not jewelry, not a title in a lawyer's file, but love. The kind that outlasts bank accounts. The kind that shows up in casseroles and kindness and legacy baked into cornbread. I did what I had promised her I would. I made Naomi's table a home again. We hosted community dinners, gave free meals every third Sunday, put up a chalkboard where people could write memories of her. By the end of the first month, it was full, covered in crooked handwriting and small thank yous. Paige never called again. Sean sent one final message. I get it now. It was never about money. It was about who stayed when no one was looking. I didn't reply. Some things are better left unsaid, because forgiveness isn't always a conversation. Sometimes it's just letting go. One night, long after we'd closed, I found myself sitting in the back booth, the one my mom used to sit in with a notebook and dreams. I lit one small candle and placed it on the table. No ceremony, just light. I whispered, I did it, Mama. My chest tightened. My eyes blurred. I was scared, but I did it. And I know you see it. I know you see me now. In that moment, I didn't feel grief. I felt her hand on my back. Not physically, but in that way we feel those we've loved when we live the way they hoped we would. Naomi's table became more than a restaurant. It became a mirror. For everyone who had ever been told they were too quiet, too late, too far away. For every daughter whose name was left out of the papers, but written into the heart of the woman who mattered most. And me, I'm still here. I open the doors each morning with steady hands. Because this story wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about recognition. About being the one who stayed when no one thought you would. And letting your work, your presence, be the answer to every question they once left hanging. They divided everything they could count, but they forgot the one thing that couldn't be measured. And now, every plate I serve, every name on this wall, and every memory whispered here carries the truth they missed. I was never forgotten. I was chosen. She let my son wash dishes after school when we couldn't afford a sitter. She hugged me through my divorce. No one mentioned the will. No one asked about Sean or Paige. They just said her name like it was a hymn. And I realized that was the real inheritance. Not property, not jewelry, not a title in a lawyer's file, but love. The kind that outlasts bank accounts. The kind that shows up in casseroles and kindness and legacy baked into cornbread. I did what I had promised her I would. I made Naomi's table a home again. We hosted community dinners, gave free meals every third Sunday, put up a chalkboard where people could write memories of her. By the end of the first month, it was full, covered in crooked handwriting and small thank yous. Paige never called again. Sean sent one final message. I get it now. It was never about money. It was about who stayed when no one was looking. I didn't reply. Some things are better left unsaid, because forgiveness isn't always a conversation. Sometimes it's just letting go. One night, long after we'd closed, I found myself sitting in the back booth, the one my mom used to sit in with a notebook and dreams. I lit one small candle and placed it on the table. No ceremony, just light. I whispered, I did it, Mama. My chest tightened. My eyes blurred. I was scared, but I did it. And I know you see it. I know you see me now. In that moment, I didn't feel grief. I felt her hand on my back. Not physically, but in that way we feel those we've loved when we live the way they hoped we would. Naomi's table became more than a restaurant. It became a mirror. For everyone who had ever been told they were too quiet, too late, too far away. For every daughter whose name was left out of the papers, but written into the heart of the woman who mattered most. And me, I'm still here. I open the doors each morning with steady hands. Because this story wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about recognition. About being the one who stayed when no one thought you would. And letting your work, your presence, be the answer to every question they once left hanging. They divided everything they could count, but they forgot the one thing that couldn't be measured. And now, every plate I serve, every name on this wall, and every memory whispered here carries the truth they missed. I was never forgotten. I was chosen.